I wish I could tell you my story starts with love, that I was born into warmth, safety, and unconditional support, but I'd be lying. My earliest memories are not of lullabies or bedtime stories, they're of whispers, shut doors, and my parents' voices going quiet whenever I entered the room. I was 5 when Uncle Ray moved in. He wasn't really my uncle, not by blood. He was my dad's best friend from childhood, practically raised as a brother alongside him. So, when he lost his job, his wife, and eventually his home, Dad didn't hesitate to open our door to him. I remember the night he arrived. He smelled like cigarettes and rain. He patted my head like you'd pet a dog and said, "Well, look at you, getting big." I didn't like him. Something about him felt off. His eyes were distilled, focused. But I was just a kid, what did I know? At first, things were quiet. He kept to himself mostly. Slept in the guest room, helped around the house, told loud, crass jokes at dinner that made my mom laugh and made me uncomfortable. He started calling me kiddo in this gruff, teasing way that made my skin crawl. And then, slowly, things changed. It started with small things. He'd accidentally walk in while I was changing, or press his hand a little too long on my back when hugging me. I told my mom once, nervously, when I was 8. She brushed it off. "Oh, sweetheart, Uncle Ray's just affectionate. That's how some people are. You're just sensitive." That became the word they used whenever I brought up how uncomfortable he made me feel. When I avoided him, I was being dramatic. When I flinched at his touch, I was disrespecting a man who had sacrificed so much for this family. So I learned to keep quiet. But silence doesn't stop monsters. It feeds them. By the time I was 10, Uncle Ray had taken over the house. He sat in Dad's chair, picked the shows we watched, shouted orders like he was some drill sergeant. My dad started acting different around him, to quieter, more submissive. Like Ray had something on him, something powerful enough to shut him up. I didn't know it then, but I later learned that Ray had been there for my dad during a rough time in college. Something secret, something Dad didn't want getting out. Ray held it over him like a leash. And my mom, she adored Ray, said he was the only one who understood her. She started talking to him more than she talked to Dad, more than she talked to me. It was around this time that the abuse started. Real abuse. Not just words or looks, but things I didn't even have names for as a child. He'd wait until my parents left me alone with him, which, horrifyingly, they did often. Sometimes even encouraged. I told them, of course I did. I told my mom first, shaking, terrified, trying to explain in broken, childlike words what he'd done. She slapped me hard. "Don't you dare lie about him like that," she hissed. "He loves you. He's family." I stood there, clutching my stinging cheek, tears in my eyes, while Uncle Ray stood behind her with a smirk. From that day on, I was no longer just afraid. I was trapped. They started treating me like a problem child, like I was the one causing division in the family. My dad said I was acting out for attention. My mom called me ungrateful. I began to wonder if I was crazy, if I was imagining everything. That's what they wanted me to believe. Ray made sure to isolate me, subtly. He'd break my toys and blame it on accidents, hide my homework, tell my teachers I had behavioral issues, and somehow, the school believed him. After all, what kind of 10-year-old accuses a respected family friend of abuse? Me. And nobody believed me. By the time I turned 13, I was barely holding myself together. I avoided home as much as I could, stayed at the library late, took the longest routes walking. Back, I started cutting myself. Not because I wanted to die, but because I wanted to feel something that made sense, something I controlled. But even that was taken from me. One day, Ray found my journal. He read it aloud at dinner like it was a comedy routine, mocking my pain while my parents sat in silence. When he got to the parts about what he'd done, he stared me dead in the eyes and said, "You've got a wild imagination, kiddo. You should be a writer." My mom burst out laughing. My dad didn't say a word. I ran to my room and cried for hours. Not because he read my journal, but because no one stopped him. That night, I made a decision. If they weren't going to protect me, I had to protect myself. So I started documenting everything. Every incident, every touch, every word. I used a hidden camera on an old phone I kept in my sock drawer. I taught myself how to hide it, how to angle it. I filmed things I wish I could forget, and then I showed it to a teacher I trusted. Her name was Ms. Bennett. She was the first adult to believe me. She cried watching the footage. She called the police. And for the first time in years, I felt safe temporarily. Because what happened next shattered everything I thought I understood about family. The police came. They took statements. They arrested Uncle Ray. I thought finally it's over, but it wasn't, because my parents bailed him out. Yes, they posted his bail, defended him, said I manipulated the footage, said I was mentally unstable, said I had a history of lying. They stood beside the man who hurt me and pointed at me as the villain. Child Protective Services launched an investigation. I was removed from the house for my safety and placed in a temporary foster home. Ms. Bennett testified for me. So did my school counselor, even a neighbor who had overheard arguments late at night. But none of that changed the fact that my own parents were fighting against me. I remember sitting in the courtroom, small and scared, while my parents stared at me with cold eyes, like I betrayed them, like I was the monster. Uncle Ray pled guilty to lesser charges. They gave him a few months in county jail, not prison, just a slap on the wrist. He'd be out soon, and I knew exactly where he'd go. Back to their house. Not mine. Not anymore. Because the court gave my parents the option: attend therapy, admit fault, and regain custody or surrender their rights. They chose him. They chose Uncle Ray over me. They said I was damaged, said I'd caused too much trouble, that I wasn't worth the embarrassment. So I was placed in permanent foster care, a teenage girl with scars she didn't ask for, bouncing from house to house, each new room colder than the last. But here's the thing no one tells you about hitting rock bottom: it gives you something terrifying. Clarity. I saw them for who they truly were. Not my family, not protectors, not even people. Just cowards. Cowards who needed a monster to cling to because facing the truth would destroy their perfect image. And I was the inconvenient truth they buried. But I wasn't going to stay buried. Not forever. Because even a shattered heart can grow thorns. And mine was just getting started. The first foster home wasn't terrible, but it wasn't home. It was clean, cold, and quiet. The couple had 3 other foster kids, and we all tiptoed around each other like ghosts. I learned to be small, unnoticed. I became a master at making myself invisible. But even in that new house, with strangers pretending to be caregivers, I kept one thing close: my journal. Every night, I wrote. Every thought, every memory, every aching betrayal. I poured the poison out of me and onto those pages because I had no one else to bleed to. I was 15 now, and I had no family. No birthday cards, no calls, no "I miss you," just silence. But Uncle Ray, he was out by then. 3 months. That's all he got. 3 months in a minimum security facility. And then he was free to roam the world while I was locked inside my trauma. I learned from a social worker that he moved back into my parents' house. Immediately after release, they threw a welcome home party for him. I saw pictures on Facebook, my mom smiling next to him, holding a cake that said, "Family first. Family first." What a cruel joke. I wanted to burn the world down that day. But instead, I went to therapy. Not because I wanted to, but because it was court mandated. I hated it at first. Hated opening old wounds in front of someone who didn't know me. But over time, I grew to trust Dr. Larkin. She was patient. She didn't flinch when I told her everything. She didn't minimize or redirect or ask if I was sure. She believed me. And more importantly, she made me believe me. "You're not broken," she told me once. "You were betrayed." That's not the same thing. I held on to that line like a lifeline. The system eventually placed me with a long-term foster mom named Karen. She was older, soft-spoken, and didn't try to replace my mother. She gave me space, but also consistency. And for the first time in years, I began to feel a flicker of safety. I focused on school, threw myself into my studies like a soldier into battle. I wasn't just learning algebra or history, I was building escape routes. College became my obsession. I needed out. I needed to earn my freedom, not just from my parents, but from the version of myself that still believed I was worthless. I never thought I'd hear from them again. But life has a twisted sense of humor. The email came when I was 17. I remember the subject line like it was carved into my skin. "Let's talk, Mom." I stared at it for a full 10 minutes before opening it. My hands were shaking. My heart felt like it would break through my chest. The message was short. "We've been thinking about you. Uncle Ray says you probably miss home, even if you don't want to admit it. We want to talk. Maybe we can all have dinner soon. Let's put the past behind us. Love, Mom." Put the past behind us? I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. I must have sounded insane. Karen asked if I was okay. I showed her the message. She frowned, then quietly asked if I wanted to reply. I didn't, not at first. But something gnawed at me. Anger, curiosity, maybe even hope, the sick kind you wish you could kill, but can't. So I replied, "I'll meet you. One time. Public. Place? No, Ray, she agreed. We met at a diner downtown. When I walked in, my stomach turned. My mom looked older, but not weaker. Her hair was dyed a deep chestnut. She wore pearls like always. My dad sat beside her, fiddling with his wedding ring like he wanted to be anywhere else. They smiled like nothing had happened. I didn't. The waitress took our order, and then the air grew thick, with silence. "We've missed you," Mom finally said, sipping her coffee. I looked her dead in the eyes. "No, you haven't. You've missed control." Her lips tightened. "Don't start." I leaned forward. "You brought a man who abused your child back into your home. You chose him over me. That's not love. That's betrayal." My dad finally spoke, voice low. "You don't understand the full story. Ray was. He was there for us. When you weren't, when I wasn't." I nearly shouted. "I was a child. A child. You abandoned me." My mom's voice snapped like a whip. "You lied. You manipulated footage to ruin our family." I froze. So that was the narrative now. Even after the court case, the evidence, the guilty plea. He admitted it. He pled guilty. I hissed, too. "A lesser charge," she shot back. "To protect you. He didn't want you dragged through a full trial. He sacrificed himself." My jaw dropped. There are moments when words feel like knives. This was one of them. I stood up. "I came here to see if there was a soul left in you. There isn't." My mother sneered. "You're so dramatic, just like him." "Who?" I asked. She didn't answer. But I knew. Uncle Ray. That dinner was the last time I ever saw them in person. When I turned 18, I changed my name legally. Karen helped me through the process. I didn't just drop my last name, I erased it. Chose a new one that had no connection to their bloodline. I filed a no-contact order. I wanted nothing from them, not even their inheritance. But life wasn't done with me yet. A year later, I received a letter from a lawyer. My grandfather, my dad's estranged father, had passed away. A man I barely knew. I met him only once, at a family gathering when I was maybe 6. He'd given me a red lollipop and told me I had watchful eyes. Apparently, he'd been keeping tabs on everything, reading court records, following the case, quietly horrified by what had happened to me. And in his will, he left everything to me. Not my father, not my uncle. Me. The house, the land, the savings account. It was a modest estate, but enough to matter, enough to make a statement. And buried in the paperwork was a handwritten letter. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. But I need you to know I believe you. I always did. Your father was too weak to protect you. But you're strong. Do something good with this. Break the cycle." I wept reading those words. Not because of the inheritance, but because for once, someone in that cursed family saw me. Really saw me. But my parents, they weren't happy. I didn't even know how they found out. But one day, they showed up at the law firm during a signing appointment, red-faced, screaming about manipulation, saying I'd turned their own father against them. They tried to contest the will. They lost. Badly. My grandfather had made his wishes ironclad. Every document notarized, every signature clear. And I walked out of that office not just with keys and account numbers, but with proof that I wasn't the crazy one. That someone else had seen the truth. It wasn't about money. It was about justice. About finally reclaiming something that had been stolen from me as a child. My worth. And that's when I knew what I had to do. I went public. Not with names, not with vengeance, but with my story. I wrote an anonymous piece for a survivors forum, then a longer essay that got picked up by a national online magazine. I shared my journey not for revenge, but for every kid who'd ever been told, "You're too sensitive," or "You're making it up," or "He loves you." And the response, overwhelming. Messages from strangers, survivors, teachers, therapists, people who said my words helped them recognize the signs, helped them escape, helped them believe themselves. I was no longer invisible. I was no longer voiceless. And while my past still haunted me, nightmares, panic attacks, therapy sessions, I wasn't alone anymore. Because I built something stronger than the family I lost, a voice. And that voice wasn't done speaking. I used to think healing was a destination, that one day I'd wake up and feel whole again. Like all the shattered parts of me would magically fit back together, smooth and seamless. But healing isn't like that. It's not a final stop, it's a road with sharp turns, broken signs, and unexpected detours. And for a long time, I was still driving with the headlights off. Even after the court victories, the inheritance, the essays that went viral, I still had nights where I woke up screaming. Still had days where I couldn't look at my own reflection without hearing Ray's voice in my head. "You're overreacting. You asked for it. No one will believe you." But now, I had tools. Support. Karen, Dr. Larkin. The online community that had wrapped around me like armor. I began speaking at survivor panels, then high schools, then small conferences. I was 19 when I stood in front of my first crowd and said, out loud, my name isn't what it used to be. And that's because I had to burn my past to rebuild my future. There were tears in the room, not just mine. People came up afterward. Some thanked me. Some couldn't even speak, they just hugged me and cried. And that's when I knew. This was the family I was meant to have. People who knew pain. People who chose light anyway. But just when I thought the worst was behind me, another ghost from the past came knocking. It started with an email from my cousin, Leela. I barely remembered her. She was a few years younger than me, lived in another state. We'd met once or twice as kids at family reunions before everything exploded. Her message was cautious, unsure. I don't know if I should be contacting you, but I need to talk. It's about Uncle Ray. My blood ran cold reading those words. For a moment, I debated deleting it. I didn't want to reopen old wounds, but something in her tone, desperate, afraid, made me reply. We spoke on the phone that night. She was crying before she even got through her first sentence. Ray had moved in with her parents. After falling out with mine, he bounced around until Lila's dad, another relative too blind to see the truth, took him in. And it had started again. The accidents, the jokes, the hugs that lasted too long. Leela was 16. She remembered hearing whispers about me years ago. How I'd lied about Ray. How I was unstable. But when it started happening to her, she knew those were all lies. She knew I had told the truth. And now, she was terrified. I couldn't breathe. This was exactly what I feared would happen. That their protection of him wouldn't just destroy me, but would endanger others. It was like watching history repeat itself in the most gut-wrenching way. I helped her, connected her with the right people, a trauma-informed attorney, a therapist. I gave a statement on her behalf when the case opened. And this time, things were different. Ray didn't just get a slap on the wrist. He was sentenced to 6 years. Not enough, but more than what I got. When the verdict came, I sat in my car and sobbed. Not out of joy, but grief for the years I lost, for the girl I was, for the girl Leela still is. But in that same breath, I felt something else rise inside me, resolve. He would never hurt another child again. Not if I had anything to do with it. After Lila's case, the public pressure on my family intensified. People started connecting the dots, articles, interviews, names. Even without identifying him outright in my early essays, people figured it out. My parents' carefully curated reputation in the community crumbled. Their family values facade turned to ash. My father was asked to step down from his position at a local board. My mother, who once hosted charity galas, was shunned from the circles she used to dominate. And then, out of nowhere, she reached out. A letter, this time handwritten. The envelope was thick, the handwriting messy, almost rushed. Opened it with trembling hands. You were right. That was the first line. I should have protected you. I see it now. I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't forgive me either. But I need you to know I failed you. I believed the wrong person. I loved the wrong person. And I betrayed the one person I was supposed to protect above all. I don't sleep anymore. I don't look in mirrors. I see your face every time I close my eyes. There were 5 pages of her pouring guilt onto paper. She said my father was broken, that he refused to admit fault, that they hadn't spoken in weeks, that she was considering leaving him. She said she was going to start therapy. She asked to meet, but this time I didn't rush to respond. I sat with it for days. I read it aloud to Dr. Larkin, to Karen, to Leela. I let it marinate in my bones. And then I asked myself the hardest question I've ever had to ask. Do I want to forgive her? The answer wasn't simple. Because forgiveness isn't a gift you give to the guilty. It's a choice you make for yourself. I met her. In the same diner. She looked different, tired, worn. Not the polished woman from before. She'd lost weight. Her eyes were hollow. Her hands shook as she sipped her coffee. I don't expect you to say anything, she whispered. I just wanted to see you. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I told her about the nights I woke up screaming, about the therapy, about the bruises no one saw, about the birthdays I spent alone. She listened, really listened. When I finished, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small, faded photograph. It was me, 5 years old, holding a teddy bear, smiling. I keep this in my wallet, she said. The day you stopped smiling like that is the day I should have known. I didn't forgive her that day, but I saw her pain. And for the first time, I knew it wasn't fake. We didn't hug. We didn't cry together. It wasn't a reunion. It was an acknowledgement of truth, of damage, of what was lost, and what couldn't be repaired today. I'm 20-3. I live in a city far away from that house, that street, that past. I work as a youth advocate for trauma survivors. I speak, I write, I sit with kids who feel invisible, and I tell them what I once needed someone to tell me. I see you. I believe you. It wasn't your fault. I visit Karen every week. We cook together. Laugh. She says I'm the daughter she never expected, but always wanted. Leela is in college now, studying social work. She wants to help kids like us. We talk often, sometimes about hard things, sometimes about dumb things. We survived, together. Uncle Ray is still in prison, and even though 6 years isn't enough, the world is watching now. He's no longer hidden. My father never reached out, not once. And maybe that's for the best. Some people stay in denial, because facing the truth would shatter the person they pretend to be. And I'm no longer shattered. I carry scars, yes, but I also carry power. The kind that comes from walking through fire and coming out with your soul intact. I will never forget what they did, but I will never let it define me again, because I am not the silent sibling anymore. I'm the voice they tried to silence, and I will never go quiet again.